The EU definition of nanomaterials was published at the end of 2011. This is a regulatory definition. What it says is that a product is a nanomaterial if 50% of the particles having a dimension between 1 and 100 nanometers, more than 50% of the particles are that size, then it's a nanomaterial. There are some other inclusions as well, for example the surface area, 60 square meters per centimeter squared for the product, per gram for the product, and there are some specific inclusions. For example, graphene is included on a specific list because of course graphene wouldn't meet the 1 to 100 nanometers definition, but because a graphene sheet is going to be much larger than that and much thinner than that. Yes, I think it's going to stick, and the reason I think it's going to stick is because of its provenance. Now, let's be clear, this isn't a regulation, it's a recommendation. But what we've seen almost immediately after the publication is a whole range of pieces of legislation that have clearly been prepared in advance, just waiting for this one missing piece, this jigsaw puzzle piece, to be able to slot into place the definition of nanomaterials, to produce regulations concerning cosmetics, concerning nanoparticle transportation, manufacture, environmental fate, all of those sorts of things. I think there's a revision of it in 2014. At that point, I think some of the elements may change, but the basic premise that one counts nanomaterials, counts nanoparticles, I think that's at the basis of this. And yes, okay, maybe just European, but of course it's going to travel further than just European borders. Well, far be it for me to respond on behalf of the USA, let alone Europe. But what we have observed, after the definition was produced at the end of 2011, in 2012, the Director of the Food and Drugs Administration made a clear public statement that they were not looking for a definition of nanomaterials. The Environmental Protection Agency similarly commented that a definition wasn't helpful at this time because a definition might be all-inclusive or not, and that to some extent this was a moving target, which one would understand. Their view was, let's try and associate physiochemical characteristics with toxicology, which is what we're all trying to do. So clearly this is relevant to the United States. It may be European legislation, but for any exporter into the European market, it's going to matter. Plus, I think that we're going to see the EU definition spread, perhaps not to the United States, but to other countries who see the EU as leaders in this field, perhaps not as best practice, but at least as first practice, adopting similar sorts of strategies, and we're already beginning to see that. A little bit in Canada, a little Australia, a little bit in Korea already. As far as the US reaction is concerned, the National Nanotechnology Coordination Office have done a pretty remarkable job in a short space of time of being able to coordinate the messages that the EU has, disseminate them within the multifarious US federal organizations and begin a two-way dialogue. The characterization challenges are enormous. Remarkably, the legislation comes before the characterization capabilities are in place, which is not untypical, we now understand, of legislators. They simply say that's the target. So the European Science Group, under the Joint Research Council, the Joint Research Centre, the JRC, have put together a primary document which scopes out at least the 8 characterization technologies that they're interested in looking at further. I'm very pleased that nanoparticle tracking analysis is on the list, but that's really the very beginning. They make 2 important points. One is that whichever method you're going to choose will be specific to the particles, the particle type, and the preparation will make a huge difference. And secondly, no one measurement alone is going to give us the results that we want. Very, very sensible stuff which we thoroughly endorse.